Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: the United States carries out fresh airstrikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels and hits targets in Iraq linked to armed groups backed by Iran. Our other headlines: ceasefire hopes in Gaza. Talks for a month-long pause in fighting move forward, while Israeli forces continue their onslaught in the south of the Palestinian enclave. China and the Pacific island of Nauru formalize their renewed diplomatic relationship. And the trains come to a halt in Germany as the country's longest ever rail strike begins, causing a 6-day headache for passengers and the economy. The United States has carried out fresh strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. For weeks, the Iranian-backed rebel group has been attacking ships in the Red Sea in what they say is a show of solidarity with the Palestinians. Meanwhile, at least 2 people have been killed in separate U.S. strikes against Iran-backed armed groups in Iraq. Our correspondent Siobhan McCall reports.
The United States military says its latest strikes destroyed 2 Houthi anti-ship missiles that were aimed at the Red Sea and were preparing to launch. The attacks came a day after the US and the United Kingdom launched a second round of joint strikes against the rebel group in Yemen.
Our focus here is not to escalate or get into a conflict with the Houthis. Our goal is to prevent these continued attacks against the international community and international shipping transiting the Red Sea.
The US says there has not been a Houthi attack since January 18th, suggesting the action is having an impact. But the Houthis say the strikes will not go unpunished or unanswered. The attacks in the Red Sea have disrupted global trade, and there is growing concern over the widening turmoil in the Middle East. China says it's deeply concerned about the tensions in the Red Sea.
China calls for a halt to the harassment and attacks on civilian ships and urges all relevant parties to avoid fanning flames in the area and jointly ensure the safety and security of the route in the Red Sea.
Meanwhile, Iraq has accused the United States of violating its sovereignty and contributing to an irresponsible escalation of violence. That's after it launched separate strikes on 3 sites linked to militant groups backed by Tehran. The US says its actions were necessary after an American airbase in Iraq was targeted by Iranian-backed militants on Saturday, leaving 4 soldiers with what have been described as traumatic brain injuries. But Iraq says Washington should focus on putting more pressure on Israel to halt its offensive in Gaza. Siobhan McCall, CGTN.
Israel and the Palestinian armed group Hamas have reportedly made some progress towards an agreement on a 30-day ceasefire in Gaza. The possible deal could include an exchange of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners. Let's talk to our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Sarah, has the Israeli government commented on this possible ceasefire?
Hello there, Jamie. Well, look, an unnamed senior Israeli official has told Hebrew media that these reports for a 1-month pause for the release of these hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners are untrue, adding that there are gaps between both sides and that these are only widening. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he is vowing to keep fighting until Hamas is defeated and these hostages are released, despite growing international pressure for the war to come to an end and for an agreement to be made. Here's more from Netanyahu.
This is a war on our home. It must end, and it will end, with the eradication of the aggression and evil of the new Nazis. Those who attacked, kidnapped and raped and murdered brought upon themselves unprecedented destruction with their own hands. I told world leaders that if Israel, God forbid, does not win, you will be next in line. The danger will reach you, most certainly, quicker than you think. I told them that our war is your war, and our victory is your victory.
And pressure is building domestically as well, Jamie. Protests around the country today, one of those held here in Tel Aviv, as people demand a deal now to release these hostages, while another group of people are barricading trucks trying to enter the Gaza Strip from that tri-border crossing, the Kerem Shalom crossing, saying that absolutely no aid should go in from Israel until these hostages are released. Jamie.
Sarah, the Israeli military is pressing ahead with its assault on Gaza's main city, Khan Yunis.
That's right. Well, heavy fighting is continuing west of Khan Yunis. The Israeli military issuing an evacuation order for more than 500,000 people in some of those areas, despite this area being declared a safe zone just a matter of months ago. Now, the military has also released these pictures of operations in Khan Yunis over the last few days after encircling that southern city. Now, they say that soldiers have killed several Hamas gunmen during clashes with tanks as well as artillery shelling, adding that troops are increasing the pressure on Hamas. And like this is an area, Jamie, that the military says is a Hamas stronghold. It is the area where it believes that the head of Hamas in the Strip, Yahya Sinwar, is hiding potentially underground, surrounded by a number of these hostages. And look, Israel continues to vow that only military pressure will bring these people home.
Sarah, thank you for that. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Now the rest of the day's news, and at least 39 people have been killed in a fire in China's southeast Jiangxi province. The fire broke out in the basements of shops in the city of Xinyu. Several people were injured and have been taken to hospital for treatment, while many others remain trapped. Rescue efforts are underway, and the cause of this fire is being investigated. Hungary is facing a growing housing crisis with substandard apartments, overcrowding and long waiting lists for social accommodation. The local authorities are urging government ministers to tackle the problem, which they say is getting worse. Our correspondent Pablo Gutierrez reports.
For years, Aniko Balash and her 3 children lived in a storage cellar. She says she had no choice due to Hungary's high rental prices and a lack of apartments for families in need.
We rented the cellar for 12 years. Finally, after many years on a municipal wait list, I was eligible to rent this 24-square-meter apartment.
Around 3 million Hungarians are struggling with housing costs. According to recent data, that's around a third of the population. Affordable rental homes are often in poor condition, including many that are in converted buildings not originally designed to house people.
There really should be actually national level housing policy system to address the problem, and that's the key.
Vera Kovac is president of the Street to Homes Association, which helps families secure cheap housing in Budapest.
There used to be a wide range of stock owned or handled by local municipalities, but then when the political system changed, most of these were privatized, and only the stock in the worst condition remained in the public hands.
Another issue pricing out many Hungarians is skyrocketing property costs, which have increased 180% over the last 10 years. Last year, the average price per square meter here in Budapest was $4,600, making it difficult for families to buy flats. But that hasn't slowed down the sales market, as almost half of all buyers are foreign investors buying up properties. The Hungarian government has left the management of public housing to local authorities, but critics say that's made the problem worse.
Or I can say there is no such state-level housing policy.
Despite the lack of national oversight, Jury says at least 200 apartments were renovated in Budapest last year. The city also changed its social housing criteria.
There is a point system, and the decision depends only on the social circumstances. So if somebody's conditions are worse, then the chance to getting an apartment from the municipality is higher.
Last year, NGOs in Hungary submitted a proposal to the government. They called for ministerial oversight, targeted housing initiatives, state renovation programs, and a recognition that housing is a fundamental right. So far, they've had no response. Pablo Gutierrez, CGTN, Budapest.
You're watching CGTN, still ahead. Cheers to that. China and the Pacific island of Nauru formally resume diplomatic relations.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
For China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us. And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
The 27th of January marks the 60th anniversary of China and France beginning their diplomatic relationship and starting a historic new chapter. We'll be covering the partnership in detail with week-long special coverage and meeting the bridge builders who have dedicated their lives to strengthening ties between the two countries. China-France 60 years, beginning Saturday, the 27th of January, on CGTN. Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. The United States carries out fresh airstrikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels and hits targets in Iraq linked to armed groups backed by Iran. Our other headlines: ceasefire hopes in Gaza. Talks for a month-long pause in fighting move forward, while Israeli forces continue their onslaught in the south of the Palestinian enclave. China and the Pacific island of Nauru have officially restored diplomatic ties. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi and his Nauru counterpart, Lionel Andriemeyer, raised their glasses after signing a document in Beijing. The two sides also released a joint communique. This all comes after Nauru severed ties with Taiwan earlier this month. Well, our correspondent Huang Yue is in Beijing. What have the two sides agreed on?
Hello there, Jeremy. Actually, you've already mentioned that the key message of the joint communique is that the Republic of Nauru recognizes that there is but one China in the world. The government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government representing the whole of China, and Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. The joint communique says that the government of the Republic of Nauru shall sever the so-called diplomatic relations with Taiwan as of this day and undertake that it shall no longer develop any official relations or official exchanges with Taiwan. The governments of China and Nauru agreed to develop friendly relations between the two countries on the basis of the principles of mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, mutual non-aggression, non-interference in each other's internal affairs, equality, mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence. The two governments agreed to exchange ambassadors as early as possible and to provide each other with all the necessary assistance for the establishment of embassies and their performance of functions in each other's capitals. The Foreign Minister of Nauru earlier said that this opens a new chapter of relations with China, and he said the relations will be built on strength, development strategy, and will have a synergy of policies. both sides have expressed their willingness for practical cooperation in the future. And Nauru is the 10th country that has severed ties with Taiwan since the Democratic Progressive Party's Tsai Ing-wen became the leader of the region. And today, after China and Nauru officially resumed their relations, so far there were only 12 countries in the world that still have the so-called diplomatic ties with Taiwan, and most of them are in Central America, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. And earlier today, Chinese Foreign Ministry again called on these countries to recognize recognize the historical trends and stand on the side of the vast majority of the international community and the right side of the history. Back to you, Jamie.
Hi, Huang Yue, our correspondent in Beijing. Thank you very much. The longest rail strike in German history has begun. Train drivers walked out early on Wednesday, with the shutdown set to last 6 days. Tens of thousands of travellers now face disruption, and the strike could cost the German economy over $1 billion. It's the fourth round of industrial action since November in a long-running dispute over pay and conditions. Rail freight drivers are also on strike. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Trent Murray at Berlin Central Station. Trent, clearly problems for passengers. Just how much disruption is this all causing?
Oh, well, Jamie, much of Germany has really ground to a halt because of this strike. We know it's having major ramifications across the entire network. The intercity high-speed service, for example, has largely been shut down. Regional trains, even some metro and subway services have had to be cancelled because thousands of drivers have walked off the job, the fourth time in around the last 6 months as part of this long-running pay dispute. It all centres around effectively two main clauses the union is trying to have changed in their contracts. The first is a major pay boost, around $600 a month. They say that they're after that pay boost in order to try and combat record inflation here in Germany. But they also want to have their working hours reduced. Their working week, I should say, would be reduced from 38 to 35 hours a week with no deduction in their salary. Now, what Deutsche Bahn is saying is that that is just simply unworkable, and they feel like the company is being held hostage by the union movement. But caught in the crosshairs of these disagreement, of course, is the travelling public, who are now trying to find alternative means of transport for the next 6 days.
They told me on the hotel, asking how I would get to Berlin, because they were aware about my situation. They're supposed to go because my flight leaves by Berlin.
6 days is too much, quite honestly, especially in the current situation. We don't need a 6-day train strike.
I'm frustrated because trains which were announced as running this morning never arrived, so I have to wait for an hour here in Cologne.
Now, while the platforms are largely empty and the trains parked up in the yards, there are some limited services running. Deutsche Bahn is offering a skeleton service, but those trains are packed. We also are hearing today that many of Germany's main road systems into the big cities are jammed, with people obviously having to switch from the rail to the car because of these strikes. Passengers are being told, Jamie, that they can delay their trip to next week or get a full refund with no penalty.
Trent, obviously infuriating and disruptive for passengers, but this is also about a huge economic hit for Germany's economy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Many business leaders here are warning that this strike is going to have a major impact on the economy. In fact, some estimates suggest that for every day of strike that takes place, it'll cost the German economy around $110 million. The big issue here is that the freight train drivers have joined this strike as well, which has meant there are huge knock-on effects across the manufacturing, across the logistics sector, sectors which say they're actually already struggling because of some of the shipping delays that have been taking place from Europe to China and Asia through the Red Sea because of what we're seeing, the disruption there. So this really could not have come at a worse time. What has been interesting is that Deutsche Bahn, as part of its public statements, has really kind of upped the rhetoric around the impact the union is having on the German economy, not just the company. Let's just have a listen to what a spokesperson for the company said earlier today about the impact this was all having on Germany Incorporated.
Trent, I don't think we've got that clip yet, but I just want to ask you, I mean, this isn't just about railway strikes, is it? I mean, looking more broadly, I mean, Germany was once thought of as the engine, the powerhouse of Europe. I mean, that we sense that's changing.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of disquiet, I think, amongst many pockets of the community here. I mean, just to give you one example, we saw an unprecedented farmers' strike here in Berlin last week. Farmers across the country descending on the capital, protesting Olaf Scholz's government's decision to remove subsidy from diesel fuel. We, of course, are seeing these rail strikes as well, and I think you are seeing some of that economic disquiet starting to impact on the polls. Certainly, Olaf Scholz's party is right down now in the polls. His broader coalition also looking quite shaky. It would appear the far-right AfD party is the one reaping the benefits of all of that. They continue to be at a record high in the polls, only seconds behind Angela Merkel's former party, the CDU.
Trent, thank you for that. Our correspondent Trent Murray at Berlin Central Railway Station. Well, road blockades by French farmers are continuing a day after an incident which saw 2 people killed at one of their barricades. Tractors have blocked the roads across the country in protest at working conditions, subsidies and EU environmental standards, which farmers say prevent them from earning a decent income. This all comes after a car hit a farmer's roadblock, killing a woman and her daughter. The protests, which have spilled over from neighbouring countries, come as campaigning for EU elections gathers pace. The US aircraft maker Boeing says it'll pause production and delivery of its 737 MAX aircraft at its Seattle plant during what it calls a quality stand-down. Employees will attend training workshops and evaluate their work, according to the company. This move follows a series of incidents involving Boeing aircraft, the latest involving the nose wheel falling off a passenger jet while it waited to take off from Atlanta's International Airport. A mutual love for civilizations and culture is what has brought China and France closer together. At least that's the view of former French Prime Minister Jean-Pierre Raffarin. As the two countries mark 60 years of diplomatic ties this week, he's been talking to CGTN Europe.
Pour moi, le monde dans 60 ans sera un monde.
For me, the world in 60 years will be a square world with 4 poles. China and France, China and Europe, Africa and the United States, and a particular link between China and Europe, and a particular link between China and Europe passing through France. France is a country that has a lot of respect for civilizations. France is a country of culture. China is a country of culture. Cultural countries are countries where people are sensitive, and we are really, I think, closely linked peoples. We have major political differences. It's clear we have systematic rivalries. It's true that we have very different systems, but our people are similar in that they're sensitive peoples. These are people in the world who are more sensitive than others. With a Chinese personality, we often understand each other by the look, by the non-verbal communication, by the way in which we can talk together. That matters a lot. And these sensitive people, I think, in China and France, can, in this world, make, I would say, a kind of sensitivity diagonal to allow them to be actors in a peaceful world, in a world whose global governance will finally lead to peace.
And you can see more of that interview in the agenda. Around the world, retailers are struggling to attract and retain customers. Now, one Chinese toy company is using a rather old marketing strategy to bring in new sales. Shoppers can buy what are called blind boxes, where you don't know what's inside your package until you get it home. Our correspondent Mira Liu reports.
Since its grand opening in December last year, every night there's been a snaking line outside Pop Mart's flagship store in Ximending.
There's no hot favorite. All of the designers in Pop Mart are popular because each has its own specific favorite quality.
Chinese collectible toy retailer Pop Mart opened its first brick-and-mortar store in Taipei in 2022. Since then, it has expanded to 10 outlets across the island.
I think because our IPs, they don't actually have a stories or a solid definition. So people can see our toy, our IPs in any kind of ways. You can you can give them their definition.
In the first week of the Ximending store opening, Pop Mart achieved a record of $1 million in sales, attracting both female and male fans. 38-year-old Zheng Yongchen, also known as Tuo, is more than just a hobbyist. He would travel from Kaohsiung to Taipei for an autograph session with contemporary artist Lang, the designer of his beloved Hirono.
从2021年，然后才接触到那个泡泡玛特，然后第一次看到。
From 2021, I started becoming acquainted with Pop Mart. The first time I saw Hirono's IP, I found the craftsman to be quality, especially the eyes, and I like his overall quality. A lot of people thought Pop Mart is from Japan because Japanese craftsmanship is very meticulous. There are a lot of materials now. Some are handmade and others are made of bamboo, but details are well executed.
While appreciation of craftsmanship is what gets them hooked, it was the community that kept them going.
主要买回来其实主要就是欣赏它，然后偶尔就是。
Buying it is mainly for appreciation. Occasionally, I take videos of it and send it to friends or post it to my social media circles. Hobbyists then look at it and then admire it.
Over the years, Pop Mart has cultivated a loyal fan base in a competitive toy industry and fostered the growth of a like-minded community beyond geographical borders. Mira Lu, CGTN, Taipei.
The headlines again. The United States carries out fresh airstrikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels and hits targets in Iraq linked to armed groups backed by Iran. Our other headlines: ceasefire hopes in Gaza. Talks for a month-long pause in fighting move forward, while Israeli forces continue their onslaught in the south of the Palestinian enclave. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
Hello and welcome to Europe's weather forecast. Let's start with temperature fluctuation by Thursday. You could expect a sliding temperatures across Scandinavia down towards into Central Europe. Then getting into Friday, the temperatures will rise a little bit once again. Back to western portion of the country, you could also have sliding temperatures as of Friday. At the same time, still widespread precipitation could be expected. Mainly rain chances for western and central Europe. Sleet could be expected across northern Balkans into majority of Ukraine, and for western Russia into majority of Belarus, there could be light to moderate snowfall this Friday. And your business and travel outlook, you could have 7 to 2 for Copenhagen, a bit colder feelings in Stockholm, and see Helsinki, both highs and lows be negative readings with a chance of light snowfall. 1 for daily highs in Minsk and Kiev over to Moscow, -2 to -5 overcast sky. Across Western Europe, daily highs be around 12 for London, plenty of sunshine showers for Paris, 14 to 1, and down to Madrid. Daily highs are going to bounce back to 20 degrees Celsius, and down to Lisbon, overcast sky, daily highs be shine of 20. That's it for now. Stay tuned for more city forecast.